your general application kind of goes down the list a little. And so that now makes it harder to get into general, but then it's already hard to get into CT. And then you're like, oh, shoot, like, I don't know if, if this will work out. I think there's two ways. You could either not confront it and try to hide it, or you could confront it and be like, this is who I am. So,
hello, and welcome to the Med School Years podcast. I'm Dina.
And I'm Carlos, where we talk about everything you need to know about the medical school journey and residency.
We've both worked closely with applicants, advisors, and schools to understand the ins and outs of what it takes to get into med school. And now we're going beyond the admissions process.
And don't worry, this podcast isn't just about the boring stuff. We're also going to give you a behind-the-scenes look at the life of medical school students and residents.
We know that medical school can be overwhelming, but we're here to break it all down for you with expert tips, insider advice, and stories from people and students who've been there.
So whether you're starting the exploration process or just curious about what it takes to becoming a future physician, we got you covered.
Sit back, relax, and welcome to the Med School Years podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Med School Years podcast. I'm Dina, here along with my co-host, Carlos.
hello.
And today we have an exciting day. We are here with Chris. Chris just graduated from the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra, and he will be entering PGY1 as a cardiothoracic surgery resident in the Northwell Health System in New York. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here today. Before we started recording, we were chatting a little bit. You said something to me. You said, it was a lot of luck to get to where you are. You placed into cardiothoracic surgery, which is traditionally one of the most difficult specialties, in a class of one. You are the only cardiothoracic resident in your program. Talk to me a little bit about the luck and any advice that you would give to aspiring cardiothoracic surgeons out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is a lot of luck. I know every time I say that, people are like, oh, no, you deserve it. But, you could do everything right. And, at the end of the day, you got to see what happens with residency and with med school applications. Of course, so much of it's out of your hands. But, you got to do just everything that you can do. And I think for everyone out there who's considering it, just go out and see what it's like. Like, I think especially as a pre-med, first year, second year, even a third year student, if you think you might be interested, just get into whatever hospital system is near you, their cardiac or thoracic department, just see what's going on, see what it's like. There's a lot of deterrence at first, I think, because it is a really intense field. And so you'll often hear from PAs, nurses, sometimes, other physicians, usually not a lot of people in the field, but everyone kind of around the field that you'll see before and after surgery, like, oh, like, stay away from CT surgery, cardiac surgery. Like, it's intense, like it's a lot. But I think at the end of the day, you just got to see what you like and just kind of see what it is and see that it's right for you. And then, take it from there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask you a question because I think you're fresh off the graduation bandwagon. How does it feel to be done? Like,
nice.
Great question.
Yeah.
I mean, think back on your journey, right? You started as a pre-med, which started way, way before you even started medical school, and then 4 years of education. And now you're entering the next phase of your training. Tell us about your med school experience. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it goes by so quickly and so slowly at the same time. It's the days and weeks are super long, and then the years are just so short. I really enjoyed it. I think that, looking forward to med school from being a pre-med, it was like, oh, like just get into med school and then everything's set, and then you get into med school and it's like, oh, wow, residency is coming up. And then I haven't been in residency, but I'm sure, in residency, it's like, oh, wait, what about when I have my own patients? And it's such a segmental process, each step. And it's so easy to just always look forward that I think kind of halfway through med school, I realized, you just kind of have to enjoy the now and just really enjoy every step of the way. And so reflecting on med school, I had an amazing time. I think Zucker was a great school, and the area was great. And I think just getting used to, because I don't think Zucker is a very competitive school in terms of, I think everyone works really well together. There's not a lot of like people who are like cutthroat or, trying to one up each other. But even at a school like that, everyone in medicine, it tends to attract more, type A people that are trying to strive for greatness. And so I think even in a school like that, it's easy to feel all the time like, foot on the gas, like you just gotta go for it. And so I think finding the time to make yourself, relax and just enjoy and just kind of like have a good time at each stage of the process is also really important.
Chris, at what point were you like cardiothoracic? At what point were you like, this is what clicks for me? Did you kind of teeter between different specialties? Like, was it a long time coming where you finally realized this was the path for you? Just tell me about the aha moment where everything clicked for you.
Yeah, I actually came into school thinking or wanting to be a CT surgeon. So I originally in high school and college, for first 3 years of college, I was determined I wanted to be a biomedical engineer. I wanted to design something within bioengineering and health care to just help people. And then kind of going through med school, I realized I really like building, or not building, because I didn't do it, but I really like the idea of heart valves. And I really enjoyed like learning about them and kind of seeing the science behind it. And so I went out and did this like extended internship in California at the startup that was designing a mitral valve device. And so that was really cool that I got to work with one CT surgeon out there and a few engineers. And I loved it, but I realized I kind of wanted to be on the other side of it, not so much the engineering side, but every time I worked with that CT surgeon, I was like, wow, like I wish I was, kind of like him. And so that kind of pushed me to go to med school. And so it was a very kind of like research innovation based thing that pushed me into medicine as opposed to more patient side. And then once I got to med school, I obviously shadowed and pursued CT surgery. And I think that's where I really saw the patient side of it, to take someone who looks super sick and is just so fearful, and their family's fearful. You're splitting open their chest, you're stopping their heart for multiple, like a hour or two, or several hours, and you have to do a procedure on their heart and then restart their heart and close their chest and see if everything goes okay. But just seeing that whole process and how like beautiful the procedures were and everything, and then you see on the tail end, in the ICU, the patient's there, and a few days later, they're feeling fine, they're with their family, laughing, they look like a whole new person. And of course, not every case is like that, because it is a very complicated field, but I think just seeing the profound impact that it had on patients and their families like really cemented it for me. Like I think it was that engineering experience that opened me up to the field, and then that just experience with shadowing that was like, wow, like this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So I think it's a really awesome field, but I definitely explored a lot of fields along the way, because I think you realize it's awesome, and then like a lot of surgical specialties, there's definitely balance in terms of where in the specialty. So like if you go like more academic center versus community, like you totally have different lifestyles. And I think sometimes as a pre-med or a med student, sometimes you think like, oh, everyone in this specialty has this lifestyle, which I don't think is always true. But there's definitely between some specialties, more intense lifestyles, obviously, and less intense ones. And so CT surgery is, of course, generally a more intense one. And so I had a lot of mentors and a lot of people tell me, really make sure this is what you wanted to do. So I went out and tried to see in, other fields like interventional cardiology or general cardiology, or just stuff that was similar, or general surgery, and just like make sure that that wasn't something that gave me just as much joy and excitement. So I think it's really important sometimes as a pre-med or med student, not just to shadow what you want to do, but when it takes a huge commitment, shadow something like very similar that's a little easier, and make sure that you don't get the same exact feeling. I guess that kind of led me to where I am.
So
Thank
I
you.
want to ask you a question, because you actually mentioned that lifestyle, right? I think
Yeah.
for many, even medical students, right, or pre-med students, they're so determined of like, this is what I want to do because this is what I've always seen myself doing. And then they get to medical school and they realize, oh, this profession or this specialty is not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did you go about discovering the process of lifestyle that fit you, right? So you're talking about, I enjoyed doing this, but then the other side of the equation is the personal stuff, the things that you enjoy doing. How did you make that sort of process of elimination, considering the things that are important to you in your life?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. For me, the answer was just try and live it for a little. Like and I think it's hard to do the first 2 years, which is why, as a pre med and early in med school, I think it is important just to get out there and just see what stuff is like. But then third and fourth year, especially when you're in the hospitals, like try to really live the lifestyle, especially fourth year, like with the sub internships or electives that people do. I think trying to live as much or as similar to a resident as you can is important. My first 2 years, I would go in for a surgery at like 7 or 8 a.m. and then I would leave at 1 p.m. I was like, wow, like that was the coolest thing ever, and I'm home for lunch, and it's just so not realistic. And then fourth year you go and you're like, okay, like I want to be there when the residents are there and I want to leave when the residents leave. And it's definitely entirely different hours. I think you can tell yourself, at least in my opinion, like, oh, 6 to 6 or 6 to 8 p.m. is fine. Like I don't mind that. Like I could, do stuff on my day off on the weekends or at night, and like that's totally fine. But I think until you live it for a month or two. And I think even living it, I'm sure when I start residency in a couple weeks, I'll be like, wow, it's still light years beyond what I thought. But I think at least putting yourself in the shoes, at least like physically, and going when the residents are there and being active and trying to get as close as you can as a student really shows you whether or not you like it. Because at the end of the month or at the end of the 2 months, if you're like, oh, I can't wait for my next time here, as opposed to, oh, thank God the month's over. It tells you a little, I think, in terms of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, going back to the previous question we asked you about watching procedures, right? And how you figured out this was the specialty you wanted to go into. Your words are so eloquent. You said you saw how beautiful the procedures were in terms of like opening up the chest and starting and stopping a heart. Like the gravity of that is so intense. Like the intensity of this specialty is like you're dealing with the open chest cavity, the engine of a human being, right? How do you envision compartmentalizing the gravity of that? And in watching other surgeons during your shadowing, what have you seen in terms of the way that surgeons make for a more lighthearted surgical environment during such an intense surgery? Is it like playing music? Is it collaborating as a team? Like, what are some traits that you think you would like to also embody?
Yeah, that's a great point. Music in the OR is a good one. At least for the hospital I'll be at, it's not as common, but some surgeons do it. And I visit a few other hospitals. People will definitely do that, and it does help. But no, it's a lot in the field of CT surgery. It's very, very rare that a patient will pass while they're on the table. Like not really seen in today's world a lot at all, but it's technically possible. And in the ICU after, like you have a ton of complications, and it is like a huge weight on you, I would imagine. I, of course, haven't had it yet, but just to have patients that, at any moment you're in life or death scenarios all the time. And so for me, I think the biggest thing that I will do is probably just lean on the other people in that situation. That's what I've seen the surgeons do often. Like, they'll discuss cases, like try to talk to each other when they're in more difficult situations, whether it's medically to, get advice on how to treat a patient or just kind of like how to deal with something. That's why I haven't seen that as much from attending surgeons because, I imagine that's more private, but definitely from residents, like leaning on each other with that. And so I think that that's really the important thing to do. I think having a big social network and social support system at home that you can really lean on. You want to get your support there. And then in the hospital, definitely being close with your co-residents and having those mentors that they definitely get it a little more because they've been in your shoes before and they've seen it and they either were able to deal with it correctly or maybe didn't deal with it as well, but then learned how they could have dealt with it well. So I think really learning on, those that came before you or going through at the same time is I think really important, especially for surgical specialties. And I think it also reflects down all the way through med school and pre-med. I think going through med school, I would lean a lot on my partner. She's been awesome in terms of, supporting supporting me and my family. And I think at the same time, on the other end, leaning on my friends at med school, because they knew exactly what I was going through, and they could say how they were dealing with it. And I think as a pre-med, it's hard depending on where you're coming from. Less people in your environment, like maybe at your college or at your grad program or wherever you are, that are like pursuing it with you. But I think the nice thing is once you get to med school and residency, it is a lot of stress and it's a lot going on, but there's so many people around you to lean on and kind of reach out to.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Thank you.
Sticking with this topic, I want to go back sort of in retrospect, looking at your journey in medical school. Do you recall a difficult patient situation and maybe talk to us like the support that was there for you to sort of deal with this difficult situation, right? Whether it was a passing of a patient or something else. Because I think I want to make sure that folks that listen to the podcast understand that you're not alone in this journey, right? You're not like you're a medical student, you're in the clinical environment, figure this out on your own. There's stuff there. You talk a lot about support, but tell us a little bit about from the support from the program direct.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one of my months that I did on cardiac surgery. I had a patient that passed that I was, very involved with, and I was, helping out when they passed. And it's really tough. I went through the first 3.5, 4 years of med school working in the lab with like the donor bodies and seeing patients that were really sick and having patients in the past that I feel like having patients that die when you're on service is not something that happens often, but it'll probably happen to every med student at some point in the 4 years, I would think. I went through all that and it never really phased me a ton. I always felt like, oh, I'm very able to kind of compartmentalize, like when I'm at the hospital and when I'm home. And I felt like as a med student, I wasn't getting close enough to patients to really feel the impact. And then that experience 4th year when, I had that patient that I saw the code and I was there and very involved and the patient ended up dying. I really, really felt it after. Like it really hit me. I was like, wow, like that's obviously a lot and really heavy. And I thought the program was really awesome. I had a resident who texted me a little while. He was like, hey, I just want to reach out, just check in that everything's okay. And I had multiple people within the program also ask me. So, and it wasn't even, they knew I was involved, but at the same time, I wasn't like a home student at the program. And so like seeing them kind of look out for me that much, I think as a med student, it's definitely daunting that you're dealing, even if you don't want to go into CT surgery or neurosurgery or any other highly acute surgeries, you'll have to rotate through services that are involving with critical care. And so knowing that, at any time there could be that situation is really daunting and scary. But I think a lot of programs are really supportive and it's really nice. And for the ones that aren't, there's a lot of people around you that are going through the same thing. And that, when you reach out or often they'll reach out, they're always very willing to kind of, talk it through and help you through that time, which is really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Chris, I want to go back to the beginning a little bit. It's very interesting. You went to Rensselaer.
Yeah.
You went to RPI for your bachelor's in biomed engineering, as you mentioned before. I used to love reading applications, by the way, from engineering majors. I just think the way that you're trained to problem solve, there's so many qualities that transfer over to medicine. How do you feel like your background in engineering helped prepare you for medicine? Whether in terms of just problem solving or collaboration or discovery, as opposed to a traditional science major?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helped a lot. I agree with you. I think it does help prepare you. Some people that I've met that are also coming from engineering are like, oh, I wish I did something that was a little more straightforward, like bio. I wouldn't have had to go through like all those painful classes and and deal with like all the engineering stuff, and it's like a little less direct. And that's true, but I do think it prepares you really well, at least for my college experience. The way that they teach you to problem solve is really, really helpful. I'm trying to think back, for this is probably gonna be a bad example, but if you are trying to like design like a screwdriver, they would teach you like if a doctor is asking you for a certain screwdriver, you wouldn't just go and build that. You would think like, okay, like what is the problem that he's trying to solve? And then think back to like what you actually think could work for that, as opposed to like just accepting, like, even though that person is very familiar with the problem and they know it, like instead of accepting the solution that they're coming up with, like thinking back out and not accepting the constraints of that temporary solution and thinking what are all the possible solutions, and then you can always work back to that point. So I think that was really helpful for med school because it's a way of expanding out and thinking of, okay, what are all the possibilities? I know that this is something that's possible, and I could always go that way, but like maybe I don't need a screwdriver. Maybe, actually a drill would work better here, but we could always come back to that. Not the best example, but I think that the way that you learn to problem solve and think about conceptually different things is really helpful for engineers. And I think it also helps a lot on the research front. I feel like I was a biomedical engineer. I think if you're biomedical or chemical, even some other types of engineers, you're in the lab a lot doing different work and seeing how experiments are run. And I think that it gets you a lot more prepared for research in med school because, there isn't always the most time for that. And so if you have a little bit of a head start, it definitely helps. So I've definitely talked to people in the past that are like, oh, I don't know if this would transfer so well to med school and everything beyond. And I think absolutely it's definitely a positive thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fun topic, research. Tell us all about it. How many research projects were you involved? And was it because you really enjoyed the research aspect of it, or was it you were preparing for residency?
Yeah, research is a lot in med school. I know for other episodes, I know Josh was on the episode the last time with neurosurgery, and if you want to do neurosurgery, CT surgery, plastic surgery, they're all just. It feels like you have like impossible reach numbers. At least the way I approached it early on in med school was like anytime I heard about a project, I was like, I'll do it. Like like I would because usually I don't know if this is every med school, but I would imagine like Zucker has like a group chat with all the students in it. And if someone has a project that is in a certain specialty, they'll be like, oh, if anyone's interested in this specialty, let us know and we'll add you to the project. So if there's anything remotely related to cardiac or thoracic or anything, I would always reach out and be like, oh, I'm happy to take it. And I was kind of just like trying to get at whatever I could because a lot of projects in medicine, I feel like, are, like die out often. Not all of them, but of course. But I think research in medicine is just so different from engineering and what I was used to. Like engineering, even chemistry, like a lot of like the PhD sciences, I feel like you're working towards one project for a few years, and when you publish this paper, it's like all of your work, and it's like this amazing manuscript. And in medicine, it's like let's pump out 20 abstracts in the year, and just like we'll split this topic into a bunch of different topics and put a paper on each one. And it's still meaningful, and not to say like research isn't, but I think there's so much more kind of fluff and urge to publish, even if you're not saying much in the paper and manuscript, or even if you could combine 3 different ideas, it's like, no, let's split it up and publish as much as possible. So it's a lot of stress. I think, thinking like, oh, I need all these numbers. What I realized in med school is like gets exponentially easier the longer you're in it. So I think the biggest thing is really just find, 1 or 2 labs or mentors that you could work with in the beginning. You just need 1 or 2 projects, and then that will kind of just like take off into all these different, side branches and all these different things that will get you to what you need in the end. A lot of people try to get on all these mini projects for these quick publications, and often it's like hard to manage all of them, and a lot of them are really slow moving, and either way it works out in the end. But I think everyone always scrambles to be like, oh, let me get on as much as I can. And I think you just have to try to stick with a few projects and try to work through that.
How many was a few for you, if you can count them off the top of your head?
That's a good question. I say a few. Like when I was doing a few and doing like constructive ones, I was probably working on like 2 to 4, maybe 5. I think early on in med school, I was doing like 6, 7, 8. And that's when it was like a lot of like very unproductive projects that just weren't moving. And like I was only really working on like 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. So I think it's like not even worth it. Like it's just sticking with like 1 or 2 projects is really what works.
You found the time. I mean, you made it happen, right?
I
You
don't know
have 4 years
how
of
you
school.
did.
Yeah. You found the time. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think the nice thing about med school is it's a lot, but a lot of schools, the lecture time is low. And so you have a lot of free time to do what you want with. And so there's some time to fit in research there. And then the other part of it is that even though I was working on that many projects, there was only half of that or a third of that that was like really active in the moment. Like a lot of them would kind of like take a backseat for a while and then okay, like we reached the next step, like it's time to work on it again. But yeah, no, it is definitely tough balancing at the end of the day.
And again, the point of all the research, right, is that you match into one of the most difficult specialties out there, along with plastics and neurosurgery. I was doing a little bit of research before we met today, and like over the last from 2010 to 2020, there was significant growth in residency positions for cardiothoracic. But there's still not a lot, over the course, I mean, across the country. So that being said, were you fearful? Like, talk to me about what match week and match day was like for you. Were you scared that you wouldn't match? And talk a little bit about how you had to apply into basically two different specialties to land where you are.
Yeah, so I applied into general and CT surgery, which I think almost necessary for most people that want to do CT surgery. But at the end of the day, if you're not 100%, I want to do CT, then I wouldn't apply. And if you're like, oh, I would never go to general surgery, then you also have to think about that. But because it's so competitive, you essentially need to apply both. It was stressful, especially because I think dual applying does at the end of the day hurt your second application, whichever one that is, which programs tend to view it that CT is what you want to do and generals, your backup for lack of a better word. And so generally if programs get wind of the fact that you applied to both, your general application kind of goes down the list a little. And so that now makes it harder to get into general, but then it's already hard to get into CT. And then you're like, oh shoot, like I don't know if, if this will work out. And so it is stressful. Match week was really stressful. I was really lucky that I got to go to the program I wanted to, but I think that you have to be very okay going to any program on your list and not applying to anywhere that you don't want to go. And I think you have to be happy with any of the specialties you do. Like for my list, I know that I had as many general surgery programs in my top 10 programs as I did cardiac or cardiothoracic, because at the end of the day, especially for these specialties where there's kind of two routes, it's really just kind of two means of getting to the same destination, especially for essentially all these different specialties that have that. Usually the general surgery route is what has been done for all of time, and my mentors and everyone that I know who's in the field went that way. And then this is like the new way that you can go, that's sometimes a little shorter, sometimes just a little more direct, and you don't have to worry about fellowship. I think knowing that, okay, both routes are training people really well, either way I'm getting to the same destination. And so at least for me, what helped was not focusing on, oh, I need general, I need cardiac. I focused on, okay, like what program do I like itself? Like, oh, like this program, I love the director, I love the residents. Yeah, it's general, or yeah, it's cardiac, but I'll be at the same place in 7 years or 6 years. But it was definitely stressful. And it was definitely a lot. And I think my advice would be for people that do dual apply is really consider that you want, whether it's cardiac or vascular or whatever that specialty you're doing in addition to general surgery or in addition to what the original specialty is, because often it unfortunately does impact both applications and can kind of keep it a little lower. So even though it technically opens more roads for you and puts more programs on the list, each one of those programs is going to kind of consider you a little less, unfortunately.
I had a question
Okay.
about you're talking about the dual application.
So exciting for us, though.
Right. I I guess the question for you is, what was your strategy to position yourself where you were not being looked at as like, well, we know that he prefers this, right? Like it's implied.
Yeah.
I will say that. But for you as like, no, I need to position myself as these are both priority for me. Like,
Yeah.
what was your strategy in conveying that, knowing that there's that feeling, right, in the back, the admin feeling of like, no, he's probably more interested in this. No, he's probably more interested in this. What was your strategy to present yourself strong for both?
Yeah, what I did, I think there's 2 ways. You could either not confront it and try to hide it, or you could confront it and be like, "This is who I am." So, I think you have to look at your application. If your application is screaming, "This is who I am," then don't try to hide it. So so for me, I was every
Yes.
general surgery application was I would come out and just say it. Like, even before they asked about it, I wouldn't, like, say it, like, as soon as I got on the screen with someone, but by, like, the 3rd, 4th question, I would answer something, and then if there's a lead in, I'd be like, well, I'm sure that my application looks really heavy into cardiac surgery, and they're like, oh yeah, I was kind of wondering that. And I would say, like, I want to be honest, I am dual applying, and I know the stigma that usually comes with people who dual apply. I want to be honest, I genuinely am not factoring it in, and I know that's just my word, but at the end of the day, I do plan on my top 5, my top 10 is going to be heavily mixed. And it was at the end of the day. And I think you have to say the people I look up to in this field were all trained through general surgery. Some of them actually recommend going general surgery. And so at the end of the day, I know that it's a very safe, very guaranteed way to go to get to where I want to go successfully. Especially if you look at all of these programs now, there's so many that are adding like research years. And so, the integrated route is nice because it technically takes 1 year off. Like general surgery and most integrated routes for like vascular, cardiac, they all tend to take time off, which is of course the appeal, and you go directly into seeing some of that field. For CT, you're going, instead of 7 years with general surgery and fellowship, you're going down to 6 years. But now a lot of programs are adding 1 to 2 research years, and so you're really not saving time. Some of them are actually longer. I would tell programs that too, because they would be like, oh, like, I know cardiac's probably like enticing because that's what you want to do, it's shorter. I was like, well, to be honest, they're really the same route. And so I know that, your kind of training has been around for into cardiac for 50 to 80 years, or something beyond that, with how long fellowships have been around. And the integrated paths, while they're awesome and nothing against them, have been around, like this century, 10 to 30 years. And so they're both pumping out amazing surgeons, but I know that this is like a very easy way to get to where I want to go successfully. And I try to just kind of take that route. And I found that, being honest, it felt like it worked. I know I didn't match into general surgery, so I don't know if it actually did work, but I think I would really look internally at what your application is screaming. If it's like very balanced or very towards, the specialty that might consider themselves as the backup, then I wouldn't bring it up personally. And if you know that, as soon as someone sees it, they're seeing vascular surgery or plastics or cardiac all over that application, then I think not addressing it hurts you, because then they're just going to assume that,
Oh,
okay, like me saying that, I, at least whether they believe me or not, they heard me out. Whereas I know that if I didn't say that, they were just assuming directly he doesn't want to come here, like put it to the side. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of
that's
course.
good. So during match week, on the Monday, you find out basically if you've matched, right?
Yeah.
And then on the Friday, you find out where. So you found out on Monday that you matched, but you didn't know. Am I correct in saying that? You didn't know if it was general surgery or direct cardiothoracic, right?
Yeah. And so so it was
It's a stressful week.
yeah, it was stressful because as much as I really love both routes, I had no idea if I was about to, go into general surgery and then need to the whole time be ready to apply for fellowship, keep the grind of research and all that. Which, not that you can't do research and stuff, obviously, with cardiac, and I didn't know which specialty. I had no idea the location. I applied kind of all across the country. And so, of course, my family and partner and myself all were interested in the East Coast, but at the same time, there were places outside the East Coast I really liked. And so between like location, program, and specialty, it was a lot for 1 week. It was a little stressful. Monday was awesome because I was like, oh, like the weight of matching is off, but
Yeah.
it was still a little, it felt like a little more than some of my friends or roommates, because they at least knew like specialty or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it was nice.
What did that relief feel like on the Friday?
It was really nice. I love the program I'm going to is of course my home program, and that's where all of my mentors are, and a lot of the people that I met in the field. And so I was really ecstatic. I had a lot of programs on my list that I was going to be so happy to go to, but I think just the relief of going where put highest and wanting to go was really nice. It was a good feeling.
Congratulations.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's amazing.
Big accomplishment. It takes a lot to get there. And I think that week is probably, well, after Monday, I think it's a little bit more relaxed, but then you're so excited that you're anxious to find out where you matched. And congratulations again for it's super competitive. Like there's no doubt about it, right? I have questions about numbers. So maybe give context to folks that are about to embark on this process or are like starting med school and they're like, well, I'm done with an application. I will never have to do this again. Unfortunately, you have to do it again. So let's just get to it. Number of applications that you submitted, like programs that you applied to.
Yeah. So for me and a lot of people, I think you have to apply to every cardiac program. There's only 35 or 40. I forget. It's between 35 and 45, but
Mhm.
I think and each one only takes between 1 and 3 people. And the vast majority are taking one. A couple of them take three, and then some take two. So I just think there's only about like mid 40s to high 40s, like number of spots in the country. I think you have to open yourself up to all of them. Even if you don't want to move location wise, I think you just kind of have to. So I would say cardiac, you have to apply to all. General, for me, I applied, I'm trying to remember now. It was around
Rough
like
number.
35 to 40.
Okay.
Which is high. I think like
Yeah.
some people I talked to applied to like 20, and some people I talked to applied to like 50. So I was a little in the middle, like somewhere in like the 30s, because I wanted to apply to as many as would get me into, obviously a residency, and preferably like somewhere within the US that I was, happier with. I think the biggest thing with numbers is, that being said, I would never apply somewhere I didn't want to go. Maybe with the exception of like the CT. I think CT I would apply everywhere, and then general I would only apply like general surgery programs that you would be like very happy to go to, because at the end of the day, if you're just applying to spots to make sure you get a residency and you're not happy there, I think it's a long commitment to try to fulfill if you're not happy.
How many interviews did you attend, participate in?
I had combined, I think, around 15 or 16
Okay.
interviews, and it was roughly like 50-50 between the two specialties.
You rank all programs,
Yeah,
or
I,
did you
I would
shoot
also.
them?
Well, I guess I wouldn't recommend ranking all pro. I did. I would say, of course, if there's a program that you really don't want to go to, don't rank it. But otherwise, I wouldn't not rank it all programs out of confidence that, oh, like, worst case, I know my fifth program's taking me, because I know people that have done stuff like that and then they don't match. So I would definitely rank all of them as long as you're okay going to them. But yeah.
And that's a tough, right? You either rank all of them because you interviewed at all of them and you can see yourself, or if you potentially not rank one and the rest don't rank you, it's now you're sort of without a match, right? And so that's sort of that strategy risk assessment that you have to make personally. Would you rather go rank at a program that maybe you were not so highly motivated by versus having to go through the match process again or having to sow the week of match? Remind me, does your specialty use program signaling?
They do, which also is a little bit of a hot topic. I know a lot of students were like, I'm not going to do any. So there's like geographical preference and then signaling. So I guess if any younger students don't know, like program signals are basically like, depends on the number of specialties or what specialty it is for the number of signals, but usually it's a very small number that you can tell the program, I want to come here, like please give me an interview. And then geographical is like these regions across the country that you can indicate that you really want to live in for residency. And unfortunately, the regions are pretty small. Like the East Coast, I think, has like 3 or 4 regions on it alone. So it's usually only a few states. But I did both geographical and signals. So a lot of people for more competitive specialties will say like, don't, geographically preference, because then you're cutting off part of the country, and you're limiting yourself to less programs. And then they'll say also like, with your program signals, you should go out and throw it to programs that don't really know you, because that way the programs that know you will give you an interview, and the programs that don't know you, you might get some more interviews. For me personally, oh, sorry.
Yeah. How many did you have? How many signals did you?
It's only 3 signals for CT, and then I think general's 10, I wanna say. It's either 10 or 15, but I think it was 10. So 3 signals is tough because, you only have 3 programs to signal, and usually people in the specialty will do like a sub-I or sub internship at their home program and then a few aways. So theoretically, if you have like 2 aways and your home program, that's like, if you're lucky enough to have a home program, that's 3 programs, and then you add 3 more with the signals. So there's like 6 interviews at baseline that you could hopefully get. Me personally, I ended up signaling my home program and my aways. Like I kind of doubled down on the programs I went to for this whole reason that for me, I was like, if every single program is only picking 1 or 2 people, then you have to be like, first or second on their list because everyone's going to try to go to the one that knows them well. And so instead of kind of putting my eggs in a bunch of baskets, I kind of tried to pick like a couple programs. I was like, I feel like this is my best shot. I'm going to give it my all and hopefully, it pans out. And then if not, hopefully get into another program. But I think it's tough because people will try to really like get to know everyone and really try to spread everything out. And I think for those really small specialties, it ends up being a lot more worth it to just pick maybe 1, 2, max 3, and just give your everything to those programs and hope that one of them kind of reciprocates.
Are you done with your numbers, Carlos?
Yeah, he went in when I said 6 months, can I ask you a
Yeah.
geographic preference? And he did. He said he did. So awesome.
Yeah,
Great strategy.
yeah, it's hard.
Worked out.
Yeah, no, I'm lucky it worked. I feel like there's so many factors in this that at the end of the day, maybe that part of it didn't help actually, and it's something else that did help. And I think it was a lot of luck, but I do think that targeting stuff towards a couple programs probably helps more than trying to please everyone and doing a little bit of everything.
What are you most excited for about residency? Like you're starting soon. At the time of this filming, you're starting soon.
Yeah.
And what are you looking forward to the most?
Just starting, just getting in there, like getting in the OR and being on the other side of stuff. Like I think as a med student, those surgeries I said were beautiful and awesome. They are beautiful and awesome, but I think it's hard because you're usually watching from like the third person view. And so they're so awesome, but by watching surgery number 200, it starts to be like, like I want to get in there and get started. And so I think I'm just excited to finally get started. And obviously the roles start off very small with residency, but just to start doing stuff and get involved. I think 4th year for any MS1s, MS2s, pre-meds, 4th year is a nice break, and you get a lot of time to yourself, which is awesome. It's like senior year of college or high school. And so I've come off a few months now of more kind of relaxing hours and kind of ready to get going.
The one question I didn't ask you, and I didn't
Yeah.
know it's important as part of the process. When did you take step 2? Because I know step 1 you took probably your 2nd year, but step 2, when did you plan it out? And I think it's needed now, right? For residency, it's no longer well, you can do it later. I think you have to include it now with your application. So when did you strategize to take that?
My school 3rd year ends in June, and so I took it like July of my 4th year, or sorry, end of June. I mixed that up. The school year ends like mid-April actually, and then I took the second 2 weeks of April and May to study, and took it like beginning of June, I think, and then started my sub internships from there. At least for me personally, I think like 3 to 5 weeks is the sweet spot for step studying. I think 3, maybe a little short, but 3.5 to 4.5, 5 is really good, because usually a lot of schools will give you somewhere around 6 weeks. And I think if you take the full 6 weeks, then all of a sudden you have to jump into all of your 4th year sub-Is, and you're coming off all this intense studying that came directly after all your 3rd year rotations. And it's just like an endless, really long year of a lot going on. So I think if you could take like a half week to relax, it like makes a world of difference for doing well in 4th year. And I don't think it impacts you that much with studying if it's only a half week to a week. But of course, if you take less time than that, I think it's tough to prepare. So I think around that time is really good.
Plus, you have to start getting ready to prepare your application in the midst of everything else that you have going on. So it's good to give yourself that break in preparation for everything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
What was your strategy for preparing your application?
Yeah, I'm sometimes a really bad procrastinator. I my strategy was to try to start early. I feel like I'm really good at starting things really early, and then I'll forget about it for a while, and then like right before it's due, I'll pick it back up. So I think the biggest thing is exactly what you said, like taking that time, like a little bit of break time to start your application, and just starting as early as you can, keeping it going for as long as you can. So, they're due in September. If you can start in like June or July, but you could just put thoughts on a Word doc for your personal statement, and it's super unformed, and it looks terrible, but there's at least something, and then you don't look
Yeah,
at
like an essay dump.
exactly. And then, you don't look at it for a month, and then you go back a month later and you're like, oh, wait, actually, I wanted it this way. And you put it, and then another 2 weeks. And then you look at it again, and you're only in July or August, and you still have over a month and or 2 months left. The whole application takes way less time than AMCAS. It's a much more straightforward application, and much easier to do. But I think doing a little bit of it throughout the summer makes it really less painful.
Do you feel like you were prepared for interviews coming out of all the med school interviews that you did? Like, I think that a lot of students go into med school interviews like with so much anxiety, right? Because I meet with so many students who are like, I've never had to interview for anything in my life, not even a job, because job applications are online now. Like, this is the first time I've ever had to interview, and I'm like, that's so crazy,
Yeah.
right? But do you think that there was less stress going into residency interviews based on what you did to get into med school?
I think so. And I think also a lot of people are, but if you're fortunate enough to have enough interviews, I think putting a couple programs in the beginning that, you could, especially like your home program that already knows you, like programs that you could not use as practice, I don't want to say, because at least for me, I was like, every one of these interviews needs to be good because I don't know if I'll get in anywhere. but like putting your top programs that you really want to get in a good interview like further along so that you can have a little more practice. But even before the first ones, I did feel a little more prepared from my med school interviews. I think residency interviews are pure 95% of them are just so like character based and just trying to get to know you. They're not like, testing or pimping you on med school knowledge. They're really rarely putting you in situations and saying like, what would you do here? Like a lot of the time it's just, like, let's kind of talk, like, tell me about yourself, tell me about what you enjoy doing, like, like what made you apply to this specialty, like just kind of very generic questions. I think more just kind of seeing if just get along with you, and if they think that, you're someone that they would want to spend a lot of hours in the hospital with. So, because anyone that gets those interviews, they already know that they're okay taking you based on like what's on paper, and so it's just
Mhm.
making sure that they can connect with you, and
That you're a human.
yeah,
Making
exactly.
sure
Oh,
that you're
trying
human.
to
Yes.
put it nice. Yeah, essentially just making sure that everything's okay and you're a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I always tell folks that even in the interview process, right? At this point, they just want to get to know you. They seen something in your application. There's an interest there. Now show them who you are through the interview process. So thank you for that advice. Good job. You did it, right? You're there. We're nearing the end of our time with you. I want to ask you a question, and we end this podcast usually this way because I find value in having medical students share sort of their knowledge. I would say nuggets of wisdom, advice for pre-health students, current medical students. Like, what is the one thing that you want them to know, take away from this entire journey? Again, you've done it, right? You're officially a doctor. um, and so what is that one golden nugget piece of wisdom advice that you would give any pre-health student or even medical student?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know it's something I kind of mentioned earlier, but I think just enjoy every step, because I remember being a pre-med and thinking like, oh, like I get into med school and I'm set. Like every student that gets into med school, like they'll eventually be a doctor, like it's fine, but just get into a school. And then, you get into a school and you're like, oh, like really got to focus on like the first year you don't really think about it, but then like second, third, fourth year you're like, oh, like residency is coming up, like gotta apply. And then obviously that's as far as I know, but for people doing fellowship, then that's a thing. And then, it's just healthcare is such a like and then kind of field, not even for doctors, but like really for anyone within healthcare. Like there's so many more next steps that you could take, which I think is a good thing. Like if you look at it, I think it's nice that there is a very kind of structured way of looking at your career, right? Like I have a lot of friends in engineering that there are like, of course, levels to engineering, but you might make like project manager at 25, 26, and then, you know, you're at that role for the next like couple decades or something. And so I think it's kind of nice that there is something to always look forward to, and there's this nice like progression of your career. But don't look forward and be like, oh, like I need to pursue that and get to that. Like just enjoy where you are, and you know, always work forward to that next step, but kind of take the time to enjoy where you're at. And the other thing is, I know me as a pre-med, I thought like, oh, like I have to get all my relaxation and like, you know, go travel, because once I hit med school, I'm not going to have time for anything. And that's so not true. There's like plenty of time to still see your friends and travel and do stuff. And you know, there's always time for everything. Even, you know, I see residents and attendings, of course, like there's always time to enjoy life. So, you know, just kind of enjoy where you're at, I guess.
That's a great advice. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. You're truly an inspiration, and I'm so proud of you. That this is
Thank you.
just an amazing accomplishment. It sounds like you're going to make an amazing cardiothoracic surgeon. So congratulations.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. We will enjoy every step in our journey. And we will take time to relax and travel. We have to make sure we tell Dr. Ryan Gray that. That Dr. Chris, our newly
You're here
minted Dr.
listening.
Chris Gasparis recommended we relax and travel. So we'll tell him that for sure. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah,
It's a pleasure meeting you. Can't wait to hear an update from you in the near future.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with the start of residency.
Thanks. Appreciate it.